New York City mayoral candidate Zohran Mamdani is speaking out after he faced backlash for comments he made on the globalize, the Intifada phrase. He held back tears during his response. Let's take a look.
I've said at every opportunity that there's no room for anti-Semitism in this city, in this country. I get messages that say the only good Muslim is a dead Muslim. I get threats on my life. On the people that I love. And I try not to talk about it. Because the function of racism, as Toni Morrison said, is distraction.
The phrase in Arabic means uprising or shaking off. It commonly refers to the Palestinian civil uprising against Israeli occupation of the West Bank and Gaza Strip starting in 1987. Israeli supporters argue it is anti-Semitic and invokes violence. Advocates for Palestine say it's meant to signify resistance by the oppressed to their oppressors.
The criticism comes after Mamdani was repeatedly asked about the phrase during an interview with The Bulwark. His explanation sparked outrage, including a response from the U.S. Holocaust Museum, who wrote, exploiting the museum and the Warsaw Ghetto uprising to sanitize, globalize the Intifada is outrageous and especially offensive to survivors. Since 1987, Jews have been attacked and murdered under its banner. All leaders must condemn its use and the abuse of history.
Meanwhile, journalist Heidi Moore pushed back on Mamdani's critics, writing, Intifada means struggle. It has nothing to do with stoking violence against Jews. This is sloppy, journalistically unethical phrasing. Reconsider if you are planning to put this kind of inflammatory, inaccurate language in your reporting. Now, Mamdani says he does not tolerate anti-Semitism and maintains the phrase is about Palestinians and Muslims' human rights. Meanwhile, his campaign has reported receiving anti-Muslim threats and messages. As you heard in that soundbite, the NYPD's hate crime unit is currently investigating a car bomb death threat that he received. Despite it all, he is closing in on former New York Governor Andrew Cuomo's lead in the race, according to a new poll released yesterday.
Ooh. To me, it seems a little bit like a non-apology. I mean, he's obviously very emotional. He says he didn't really understand the phrase could be taken that way, but then he immediately makes it about himself and the threats he's received. And I think we both agree that any threats on someone's life are unacceptable. But to kind of be like, well, but look at how hard it's been for me, I was like, that's a little suspect.
Well, it's interesting, though, it seems like the polls, folks maybe aren't paying as much attention as the media is giving it to. Like, I look at that and it's like all that back and forth, and I'm like, whew, because it is a lot of back and forth. And look, we need to correct folks when language is used inaccurately or inappropriately. And I think he's running for office. It makes sense. But I think a lot of Americans are looking at, what about the other issues? What about the race in general and as a whole? I think that his apology, like you said, he's saying, well, I didn't mean it this way. And then he's talking about himself. I think for him, maybe he was taken aback. I don't want to speak for him, of course, but maybe taken aback in that moment about what this has done for him personally and maybe was overcome with emotions. But, I think a lot of folks are looking at that and maybe they're going to excuse it if his polls are showing that he's still, doing okay. It will be interesting to see how he goes against Cuomo in this race and what the end result is, especially looking at where they do both stand. And he would be the first Muslim mayor, too. And so I think that, a lot of folks are looking at it and saying maybe he made a mistake. But I do agree. It wasn't like a full apology.
Yeah, it is interesting watching the polls in this race with him closing on this lead on Andrew Cuomo, who obviously has a ton of name ID, huge legacy in the state. But there's a lot of opportunity there, too, because Cuomo is not without his scandals. Obviously, the sexual harassment scandal that led to him resigning his office as governor, as well as the COVID nursing home scandal, both of which he's been attacked for in the recent debates in this race. Mamdani, I thought, had a really shining moment early on in one of the first debates where he was asked about if he would visit Israel when he was New York mayor. And his point was, I'm the mayor of New York City. I'm not the mayor of Israel, which I thought was actually a really great response. But then when he went on and started talking about the Intifada in that way, it's like you kind of gave ammo to critics accusing you of anti-Semitism and maybe blunted what should have been a kind of unifying moment in talking about your focus on New York by using this violent rhetoric.
Well, it's interesting, too, that he's doubled his support with Latino voters in the past few months. He seems to be gaining headway. He does well in terms of the very liberal audience in New York. He has gotten backing by apparently Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez recently as well. So he's gaining traction. Will this moment be the moment that splinters his opportunity in this race? I think time will tell whether it is. But as you mentioned, you're going against someone who has this huge legacy, but also has many moments of, we can say downfalls, right? And where he has tried to come back. Some people like also an individual. I think of, Marion Barry in D.C., not to make a comparison of the two, but who had this comeback. Like,
right.
Sometimes people do go with the person who they feel he made mistakes, but he's coming back, and they like the fighter aspect of someone who's not going to be taken down. So I could see New Yorkers going that way too, and not, looking at Andrew Cuomo and saying, hey, we're okay with it. We're okay with it, and we appreciate you coming back. So I think it'll be interesting to see what happens. But, we were talking about this during the break, that I think that it is an example of how one remark can lead to all of this backlash, this vitriol. Then you have, potential threats on your life from one remark, and how even a halfway apology doesn't really go very far, even one with tears now. So I don't know if this will be in the news cycle very long, but it certainly has gotten the attention nationally. I just don't know in New York if it's going to sway the race the way people think it will.
I think your comparison of Marion Barry to Andrew Cuomo is really apt, and it's a great point, because often we see in these big cities that, and I've said this so many times on the show, the viewers are probably tired of hearing it, but when you live in a big city, there's kind of a level of corruption that you're okay with, because so long as the subway's not being flooded, or crime is down, and things are generally good for your pocket, right?
Yeah,
like those quality of life issues, so long as those are getting done, people don't mind, a kickback to a friend every now and then, scandal here and there. It's sort of like you just come to expect it with the big machine politics that take place in a city. And the other element of this that we haven't really seen yet is Cuomo going really hard on the offensive against Mamdani. As far as I can tell, there hasn't been a big opposition research dump on him. There hasn't been a huge push from the Cuomo campaign to fire back against him. So maybe they're kind of waiting to see who he is first. And maybe this moment would signal to them, okay, this guy's going to shoot himself in the foot, so we don't really need to do that much and draw more attention to his campaign, because they're probably worried right now about the Streisand effect of, well, if we go really hard on the offense, that's going to show that we're scared of him, that we're worried about him, right?
For you too, and they're going to go dig back, remind voters about all of those scandals and all of the things that you want to put to bed. So I think it could they're looking at it too. This could come kick us in the butt.
Yeah, but I do love that every time there's a New York City mayoral race, that it's always captures the national attention. Look, people would call it the greatest city in the world. I'm not a New York fan, but I get why it captures so much national attention, and I always enjoy watching from the outside, from my safe little Virginia home.
Well, look, I grew up right outside of the D.C. area, so Marion Barry in the 90s especially, that's what my dad talked about. So that just comes to mind. All right, we've got more coming up, of course.
Yes, we do. Is being a liberal a happiness killer? Well, we will discuss after this break.